In a lively village nestled between rolling hills and whispering rivers, there was a woman named Amma, known for her unwavering passion for cooking. Amma had transformed her small bukka into the soul of the village. Her food didn't just nourish the body, it filled the spirit. Villagers from miles around flocked to her little stall for a taste of her legendary dishes and her comforting smell. The meal she cooked carried the warmth of her heart and a dash of something magical that no one could quite describe. Amma's dream was simple: to open a large bukka that could serve her beloved food to more people, and to one day pass it down, letting her legacy live on. When Amma met Eze, a quiet but seemingly devoted man, she was swept away by his promise to support her dreams. He courted, and he listened to her talk about recipes, spices, and dreams of expansion. His words were like honey, sweet and convincing, and she believed him. They married, with visions of a shared future, but Amma could never have known what lay ahead. Once they moved to a neighboring town after the wedding, things changed swiftly. Amma brought up her plans and to start her cooking business, eager to carry her passion forward. But Eze's support disappeared like morning mist. He brushed aside her dreams, dismissing her words as childish fantasy. "You are a wife now," he said coldly. "You have responsibilities. Cooking for strangers isn't part of them." When she persisted, gently reminding him of his promise, Eze's patience crumbled. At first, it was just dismissive words, but his temper was easily provoked. "Enough of this foolishness," he would yell, casting her dreams aside like they were worthless. Amma stunned, but she held her ground, hoping his moods would soften with time. She believed he would remember the promise he had made in their courtship, that his love would rekindle his support. But things only worsened. One night, after she again brushed the idea of starting her bukka, Eze snapped. He grabbed her roughly by the arms and dragged her to the kitchen. "If you love cooking so much, this is where you should belong," he hissed, shoving her against the stove. Amma trembled in shock and fear, her arm throbbing, but she said nothing. She was frightened, yet her spirit resisted breaking. She held on to hope, thinking that maybe, if she showed him how important this was to her, he would understand. In the days that followed, she tried to approach him more delicately, softening her voice, choosing her words carefully. But each attempt was met with cruelty. Eze ridiculed her dreams in front of neighbors, and when they were alone, his anger turned violent. One night, after a long silence over dinner, she gently asked him again if she could set up a small food stall just to earn some money of her own. His eyes flashed with rage, and before she knew it, he struck her across the face. Amma's vision blurred as pain seared her cheek, and in that moment, she felt her spirit shatter just a bit more. Amma's days became a blur of fear and obedience. She barely recognized herself anymore. The woman who once laughed with her customers, who spent nights perfecting her recipes, was now silenced, hollow. She began to retreat within herself, speaking less and less. The neighbors whispered about the change in her, but when asked, she would just lower her gaze and smile sadly. "It is nothing," she would say, hiding bruises and broken dreams beneath her clothes and silence. Finally, desperate for help, she returned to her mother, telling her in tearful whispers what she had endured. But her mother only looked at her sternly. "Go back to your husband's house, Amma. A woman's place is with her husband, and marriage isn't easy. You made vows," she reminded her, as if this suffering was just part of the promise. Heartbroken and feeling utterly alone, Amma returned to Eze. When he saw her back, he laughed, his ego swelling with the knowledge that she had nowhere else to go. From then on, he didn't hold back his cruelty. Every time she mentioned her bukka, every time her eyes lit up with the old spark of her dream, he would beat her down physically, verbally, and emotionally. Amma became like a shadow in her own home, moving silently, cooking only for him, swallowing her tears with each meal she prepared. Yet, no matter how much he tried to crush her, the fire inside of her refused to die completely. She saved what little she could from the housekeeping money he grudgingly gave her. With the small stash she managed to hide, Amma eventually bought a few pots, a bag of rice, and some spices. And one morning, while Eze was out, she slipped away and set up a small humble stall on a busy street corner. She started cooking again, feeling the joy rush back as she prepared meals for the town folk. The news of her delicious food spread quickly, and before long, people flocked to her stall just as they had in her old village. For the first time in years, Amma felt alive and hopeful. When Eze learned of her success, his jealousy ignited like wildfire. He forbade her from leaving the house, claiming that her cooking was shameful and that it embarrassed him. But when he saw that she was undeterred, his anger turned deadly. One evening, as she returned home from her bukka, he confronted her. Rage twisted his face. He lashed out, striking her again and again. This time, Amma couldn't withstand the fury. Her body weakened from years of suffering. She gave in, and her spirit slipped quietly from this world. Amma's final days were marked with a silence so heavy that even those around her could feel its weight. After a particularly brutal assault, she was taken to the small dimly lit clinic in town. The nurse on duty that night, a young woman named Chioma, noticed the bruises scattered like dark clouds across Amma's body and the pain that lingered in her eyes. She knew, as only women who had seen such things could know, that this was more than an accident or simple illness. As she examined Amma, Chioma's voice was gentle but insistent. "Amma," she said softly, taking her hand, "can you tell me what happened? This doesn't look like it was an accident." Amma shifted uncomfortably, her face drawn and tired. She felt the sting of shame, but forced herself to keep her composure. Eze had told her, warned her even, to remain silent about what went on behind closed doors. She could still feel his grip around her waist, his cold voice hissing, "You know what will happen if you tell anyone? Keep your mouth shut." Fear gripped her heart as she looked away from Chioma's concerned gaze. "I fell," Amma murmured, her voice so quiet it was almost inaudible. The nurse gave her a searching look, sensing that there was so much left unsaid. But Amma's eyes were distant, and her silence unwavering. Chioma sighed, frustrated but helpless, jotting down the injuries as a fall. She watched as Amma lay back, her breathing shallow, as if hiding a truth too painful to reveal. Days passed, and though Chioma cared for her, Amma's health rapidly declined. The repeated injuries had taken their toll, weakening her body beyond repair. In those final moments, as she lay on the hospital bed, Amma glanced at Chioma with a flicker of regret. She wanted to say something, to free herself from the terrible truth she had kept buried, but the words wouldn't come, and the weight of her silence followed her into the darkness as she took her final breath. After her death, Eze wasted no time covering his track. He knew the nurse had seen the bruises and might begin to suspect something more sinister. He called in a favor from an old friend, a doctor with debts to settle, and slipped an envelope of cash to both the doctor and Chioma, urging them to alter Amma's medical records. Eze insisted that her death be recorded as a tragic accident caused by a chronic illness, a weak heart, or anything that would clear his name. The doctor, driven by a desperate need for money, altered Amma's fate without question. Choma hesitated, guilt gnawing at her conscience, but faced with the threat of losing her job and the lure of the bride, she reluctantly agreed. She knew the truth was being buried alongside Amma, yet she signed the falsified records, sealing away any chance of justice. In the end, the official cause of death read as heart failure due to illness, a lie inscribed in cold clinical terms. Izzy felt a gleam of satisfaction, believing he had wiped his slate clean. The truth of Amma's suffering was hidden beneath layers of deception, and her spirit was left to wander in silence. But some truths, no matter how deeply buried, find their way back to light. But Amma's soul found no peace. Her passion, her pain, and her unfulfilled dreams bound her spirit to the earth. She wandered to a distant town, a place where no one knew her name, and set up a bukka once again. Only now, she was a ghost, serving not only the living, but wandering souls like her spirit who had met untimely ends. Yet, even in death, her spirit wasn't free from struggles. When Amma reopened her bukka, as a ghost in the new town, she quickly found that business was not as easy as before. The area was a middle-class neighborhood where people rarely bought street food, preferring to dine in upscale establishments. Her usual charm wasn't enough to draw the crowds she needed, and each day she sold only a few meals, barely sustaining her new venture. Desperate to bring in more customers, Amma turned to supernatural methods. She began using the water left after bathing wealthy spirits, making incantations over her cooking pots to infuse the food with an otherworldly allure. Almost immediately, people began flocking to her stall, enchanted by the taste of her food. Before midday, her entire stock would be sold out, forcing her and her ghostly helper to cook batch after batch to keep up with the demand. Her bukka became a sensation, drawing both the living and the spirits alike, as whispers spread about the mysterious flavor only found in her meals. One day, a man arrived, hungry and in need of food. It was Oke, Eze's old friend, whose car had broken down nearby. Oke stood at the edge of the bustling bukka, his heart pounding as he took in the sight before him. The woman serving food looked uncannily like Amma, his late friend's wife. He felt his stomach knot with disbelief. Could it really be her? Unsure of what he was seeing, he quickly called Eze, his old friend. Eze, does Amma... No. Did she have a twin? He asked, his voice tight with confusion. Eze, caught off guard by the question, replied flatly, no. Amma was an only child. Oke's mind raced, but he tried to maintain his composure as he hung up. Stealing himself, he discreetly took out his phone and snapped a photo of the woman when she turned to grab a pot. Too busy to notice his presence, she was occupied, attending to the throng of customers who eagerly waited for their meals, her focus entirely on her work. In a daze, Oke went up to the counter and ordered a dish, his eyes never leaving her face. Her movement, her gentle smile as she served others, everything felt eerily familiar. When his order was ready, he took the food, but he didn't eat it. Instead, he walked back to his car, clutching the warm package. Sitting in the driver's seat, he stared down at the food in his lap, the photo on his phone burning into his mind. As he sat there, he couldn't shake the feeling that fate had dealt him something impossible. He wondered if perhaps there was truth to the old saying that people are created in twos, each soul with a double somewhere in the world. The thought lingered, unsettling yet strangely captivating, as he considered the next steps he needed to take. When Eze arrived with Oke by his side, His heart pounded as he caught sight of Amma's face among the crowd. She looked exactly as he remembered, yet there she was, busy and vibrant, serving food as if she had never left this world. He felt a sort of panic, a dark reminder of his guilt, but anger and disbelief quickly overpowered it. Unable to hold back, Izzy shouted her name, his voice cutting through the hum of the bukka. Amma returned, her eyes locking onto his, wide with shock. For a moment, a mask of calm cracked. She had never expected to see him again, not in this life. But before she could react further, Izzy began to shout, his voice dripping with contempt. "This woman is a witch," he bellowed, turning to the crowd, his eyes blazing with accusation. "How can a dead woman be here, cooking for the living? She's taking souls with this cursed food." The crowd fell into uneasy silence, some stepping back in fear. Amma's customers looked at their plate with doubt, panic flickering in their eyes. The whispers grew as Izzy continued, his voice rising to a fevered pitch. "I know her. She's evil, taking innocent lives and binding them to her food. She has bewitched you all." But Izzy didn't realize that Amma, now freed from the bonds of life, no longer had to fear him. She stood tall, unyielding, and her voice cut through his accusations like a knife. "I am no witch, Izzy," she said, her voice echoing with a haunting strength. "But your cruelty, your abuse sent me to an early grave. You thought I would remain silent even in death, but I will tell them the truth." A hush fell over the crowd as Amma began to recount her story. She spoke of the years of suffering and the promises Izzy had broken, of the feast he raised against her and the threats he whispered late at night. She spoke of the pain he had inflicted, how he had robbed her of her dreams, her dignity, and finally her life. Her voice trembled as she told them of the final assault that had ended everything, of the falsified records he had bribed others to create, erasing the truth of her death. The townspeople were transfixed, their initial fear melting into outrage as Amma's words sank in. Izzy's accusation faded, his power dwindling as her story revealed his cruelty. Oke, horrified by the truth, stepped forward and held Izzy, restraining him as others called for the authorities. Izzy struggled, but he was no longer the center of attention. The crowd was captivated by Amma's words, and the truth of her life and death resonated with every person who listened. As her tale came to an end, Amma felt a strange peace wash over her. Her spirit began to fade. Her face softened with the glow of freedom. She cast one last look at the crowd, as the people who now knew her story, and she disappeared. Amma's voice lingered in their minds, her courage inspiring them to remember her story and honor her truth. As Amma's spirit revealed the truth about her abuse and death, a bystander in the crowd quietly recorded the entire revelation on their phone. The shocking footage captured Izzy's desperate accusation, Amma's heartbreaking confession, and the crowd's reaction as the truth of her suffering unfolded. When the police arrived, they were shown the video, and, with mounting evidence against him, Izzy was taken into custody. Oke, shaken by everything he had witnessed, went home that evening with a heavy heart. He sat with his wife, recounting the event and the horrifying truth about his friend's actions. His wife, deeply moved and saddened, urged him to bring the record to Amma's mother, who deserved to know what had really happened to her daughter. Together, they made their way to her village, determined to share the truth. When they arrived, Amma's mother welcomed them with a gentle smile, unaware of the tragedy about to be laid bare. With a heavy heart, Oke played the recording, each word of Amma's confession hitting her mother like a blow. As As she listened, grief and shock contorted her face, her heart breaking as she finally understood the terrible fate her daughter had endured. The anguish was too much for her, and soon, after learning the truth, her frail heart gave away, leaving her family to grieve once again. Refusing to let Ama's story end there, Oke and his wife sought the advice of a reputable lawyer, determined to bring Eze to justice, not only for Ama's abuse, but for his cover-up of her death. They laid out the evidence, and with the lawyer's guardians, prepared to ensure that Ama's memory would be honored and her story told. The lawyer listened carefully as Oke and his wife shared the heartbreaking recording of Ama's revelation. Though moved by their determination to seek justice, he cautioned them with a sober expression. While this recording is powerful, it could be challenged in court and may not be enough on its own. He explained, a defense team could argue that the video is not reliable evidence or that it doesn't provide a clear enough account of Eze's actions. He paused, considering their options. If you want to build an unshakable case, you need more than this recording. Go back to the bukka and gather witnesses who were there when Ama's spirit revealed the truth. If we can find the nurse and the doctor who falsified her medical records, and they are willing to testify against Eze, it will be a much stronger case. With their testimonies, it will be nearly impossible for him to evade justice. Oke nodded. A spark of hope reignited in him. The path forward was clear, but it will require courage and persistence. With the lawyer's guardians, Oke and his wife resolved to seek out anyone who had heard Ama's story and would stay by her, ensuring that Eze would finally answer for the life he had taken. That night, while Oke's wife slept, a strange and vivid dream took hold of her senses. In the quiet darkness of her room, she felt a presence, soft, gentle, yet heavy with sorrow. She opened her eyes to see Ama standing at her bedside, her form illuminated by a faint, ethereal glow. Ama's face was a mix of strength and sadness, and her voice, though soft, held a desperate plea. "Please," she whispered, reaching out as if to touch her. "Help me find justice. I couldn't speak in life, but now my truth has come to light. Don't let him get away with what he did. Don't let my suffering be forgotten." Oke's wife felt a rush of emotion, her heart aching at the death of Ama's pain. She wanted to reach out to comfort her, but as she moved, Ama's image began to fade, leaving only the lingering weight of her words. Waking in a start, Oke's wife knew with unwavering certainty what they had to do. She was determined to bring Ama's story to court, to gather the evidence and witnesses needed, and to ensure Ama's spirit could finally find peace. Please, if you want a part 2 of the story, kindly comment.